Okay, well, thank you very much. As Joe said, for those who don't know me, I'm Ellie Reeves, and as well as living here and been a member here for quite some time, I'm on the National Executive Committee of the Labour Party. After the general election and our defeat there, I think that as a party we recognised there was a need to look at what went wrong, and three really reviews were launched. One was a policy review, which is headed up by Liam Byrne, and the other is in relation to our party structures, which is led by Peter Hain. Back in November, Peter asked me to assist him to be the vice chair, if you like, of the review into looking at our party structures. And so since November I've been spending a lot of time going around the country, speaking at regional conferences, speaking at CLP, speaking pretty much anywhere where anyone invited me about party reform. So it's really nice to come and speak at a meeting which is a couple of roads up from my house. So thank you for that. I don't want to speak for very long because I want to hear everyone's contributions to feed into what we're trying to achieve, but I just want to make a few opening remarks to put things into context and why we think this is so important. I think at the time of the general election there's a bit of a sense that maybe we'd sort of lost our way a little bit and weren't really as in touch with what people on the ground were saying as much as we should have been. And that sort of led to looking at reforming our policy making structures and how we can be better engaged. I think there's also a sense amongst members that they're not always listened to within the party, that they need a stronger voice. Before I was on the National Executive Committee, I was a London representative on the party's National Policy Forum, the policy making body of the party. I think I first got elected to that about 10 years ago, and I can remember going around to regional policy forum events where lots of CLPs would get together. I'm sure we had one at the town hall in Lewisham where CLPs would get together and members would, 100 or so members would get together and they'd go through these great big policy documents and come up with fantastic submissions and policy ideas, and someone would be sort of scribbling notes and they'd submit their ideas to the party nationally, and they never heard anything back again. And I think there was a bit of a sense that members began to feel slightly disenfranchised with the process because they'd come up with all of these great ideas and they'd never find out what happened to them. Now if we have events like that, and we've had some policy conferences in Lewisham, but that's been a little bit unique in relation to some other local parties. If they happen at all, they tend to be not as well attended. It's not because members don't care about policy making, it's just that I think people became a bit kind of disenfranchised with the process. So that's something we really need to look at and think about how we can put members back at the heart of that process. I don't think members necessarily think that every idea they come up with is suddenly going to become Labour Party policy, but I think what they do expect and what they're entitled to expect is that if they take the time to submit ideas and the CLP gets together to do that, there should be some sort of audit trail of what's happened to those ideas, and there should be a recognition that someone's actually looked at it, thought about it, and if it isn't adopted as policy, why not? And that's something which we need to look at in terms of the policy making review. But I think there's also a sense that we need to look at how we operate on a local level and make sure our structures are fit for the 21st century. One of the first events that I did talking about party reform was to our youth conference up in Glasgow at the beginning of February, and we've had about 50,000 new members join the party since last May, and a lot of them are young members. And I was up at this youth conference doing a session. There's about a room of about 300 people, and I said, put your hands up if you've joined the party since May, and about half of the room put their hands up, and I said, put your hands up if you've been along to your first branch meeting, and about half again, 75 put their hands up. I said, okay, put your hands up if you enjoyed it. And about 3 hands went up in the air, and I think they're probably just being polite. And I think we need to look at that and make sure that what we do on a local level is interesting and exciting and dynamic, and that not just that we keep those 50,000 new members engaged, but also members that have been members for a long time want to come back to meetings. I think we're getting quite good at it in Lewisham. We've got things like the NHS campaign. We've often got a menu of events that people can go to, but it isn't always the same across the board. And again, we've got some branches that are less active than others, and that's a problem in constituencies up and down the country. So one of the things that we're looking at is that how can we get the right structures in place so that our meetings are interesting and they're engaging and people do want to go along to them. And that's something that which we need to look at. Leading on from that though, is a sense that we're often very good at sitting in rooms like this speaking to each other, but what we're not quite as good at is going out to the public and getting our message to the public, and that's another thing which the review wants to look at. Again, it's something which we are quite good at. We've got the NHS campaign. We had the Women's Officer of the CLP, we had a Women's Forum campaign day on Saturday. We were in Deptford Market handing out leaflets, hands off our pensions leaflets, and we had a public meeting after that. We had people that were just sort of doing their shopping in the market that are interested in coming along. It was a Labour Party event, but it was a way of getting the wider community involved and sort of making those links. So I think we're good at it again, but not everyone is so good. And one of the things that this review is looking at is perhaps how can we formalise some of those ideas about engaging the wider public. If, for example, we're having a meeting about housing cuts, should we invite along local residents associations? If we're having a Labour Party meeting about the NHS, should we invite along health users, GPs, health workers, etc.? All of those sorts of things, looking at how we can be a bit more outward looking. One of the more controversial things in this document, which leads on from the idea about wider community engagement, and it's something that I'd really welcome your views on, is an idea that there could perhaps be some sort of halfway house between Labour Party membership and non-membership, a sort of a Labour supporter who could, who perhaps shares some of our values and beliefs, might want to get involved in particular campaigns, but doesn't want to become a fully fledged member. I think we've got the lowest joining rates of political parties in all of Western Europe. It just simply isn't a normal thing now to join a political party, whether it be Labour or the Conservatives or the Liberals. I can't imagine that anyone would want to join them at the moment. But we have very, very low joining rates of political parties in this country. And that's why we're looking at this idea of being a Labour supporter. I guess the idea would be that you'd get them in, invite them to socials, maybe some meetings, and then try and get them to become fully fledged members. What sort of rights would supporters have? If they have any voting rights? Probably not. How would that work? One of the ideas is they pay a small amount of money, perhaps £2 to £10, and that money would go direct to the local party rather than the party nationally, perhaps to help with some of the community campaigning work, which I think is so important. So all of those things are up for review. Also in this document, there's questions about what should the role of Labour Party conference be? How should we elect our leader? What should the role of councillors be in the party? All of these things are up for review. It's a really good opportunity, I think, to look at our structures and look at how we can get things right and have the right structures in place so that we're a strong party going forward, with the sort of vehicle to go forward and win elections and get out there campaigning. So I want to throw it open to you to come up with ideas about what you would like to see, any questions about the review or anything like that.